Sandra is from the University of Manchester, and her presentation will cover priceless procurement, process innovation, and evaluating non-financial outcomes. Sandra, a warm welcome to you.
Thank you so much. My name's Sandra Hamilton. I'm Canada's first social MBA. I wrote Canada's first social procurement frameworks, and I'm doing a PhD. And today I'm delighted to be able to present the first review of my empirical research. So it's about people, isn't it? It's about how we look after one another. So clean air, water, the well-being of people and planet are today the things that we value most. That's very important to people. It's rising in importance, and we're certainly seeing that rise in public procurement. So what we're asking, let's be really clear, is we're asking markets for the most part to deliver non-market outcomes. And I think this slide really captures what well-being is and what we value. What's growth for? We've had a very strong focus on economic growth, but it's become disconnected from societal progress. So as Jacinda Ardern in New Zealand said, you know, what is the economy for if people aren't thriving? Positive or negative outcome, every purchase we make, and as a collective, our taxpayer-funded systems are spending trillions globally, and it has a positive or a negative outcome. That has to be intentional, has to be purpose-driven. And so central to this debate is outsourcing and how value is defined in public contracts. It's not moving. There we go. Okay. So I wrote a paper called Public Procurement, Price Taker or Market Shaper, and I looked at these three paradigms of the history of procurement, goes back a long way, being aligned with social outcomes, back to sort of 1840 in the States. But in the 1980s, through Ronald Reagan, Margaret Thatcher, there was this move that procurement should absolutely prohibit non-commercial criteria. And we started this 30-year journey with procurement being about pursuing the lowest price globally. And it was about market liberalization, it was about outsourcing. And now I think we're seeing the rise of the sustainability agenda and looking at, can we compete in a more sustainable and innovative way, or will we collaborate our way forward? And I think we have to really think about, are we going to compete or collaborate our way forward? We're seeing countries like Japan in 2001 mandated green criteria in their public procurement. Did you catch that? 2001. The Netherlands and the UK are now mandating circularity, and social value must be evaluated in taxpayer-funded contracts. So what I thought I would do is point out that, not going. Yeah. Is point out that cost saving is declining as an importance. Sustainability is rising, and resiliency has come out of nowhere since the pre-pandemic to post-pandemic. And we're seeing that in public sector and private sector supply chains. Next slide. Okay. So public value theory tells us that we need an authorizing environment, clear outcomes, and capacity. I think we have the authorizing environment. There's a lot of myths around it, but anything I wanted to do in my practitioner work for the last 10 years, we've been able to do it. It's the myth that was holding us back. So I think there is an authorizing environment. There are clear outcomes. What we're talking about now is culture change and building capacity. So my research asks, how do public managers respond to mandatory social value policies? What actually happens on the ground? And I researched the case of Greater Manchester. Greater Manchester was a very early adopter of social value procurement and thinking around social value. It is also around 20% weighting is normalized now in across Greater Manchester local authorities and regional government. The high, it's a 30% weighting. Next year, if you want to bid on a contract in Greater Manchester, you will need to pay the living wage, you will need to sign the Good Employment Charter or an equivalent, you will need to have a credible carbon plan, and you will need to be setting aside contracts for the VCSE sector. So what have I learned? How social value is interpreted matters and affects management decisions. So if social value is an additionality in the procurement function, there will be a very different approach to management and implementation to if it is a mindset that is organization-wide. So what I'm trying to show in the blue and the orange colors is that the most transformative actors are working with strong political support, are working with strong leadership, and are working with social value being embedded as a mindset organizational-wide. The blue actors are adding on to the existing system. So where do the most transformative actors, how do they identify community need? And what they do is they talk to the people that they are most wanting to help. This is about changing lives, and for the most part, it's about poverty, inequality, and about providing opportunity to people that the current economic system doesn't work for. So we're seeing co-production of frameworks through networks like the Social Value Network. We're seeing accords and agreements bringing in strong partnerships with the VCSE sector, and we're seeing a collective definition of what is good employment. So you'll see those highlighted on the slide in yellow. In green, we see the rise of social brokerage and the importance of communication between sectors and online platforms. And that makes it dynamic. Instead of having static reports, we can have dynamic interchanges. And in blue, how that aligns with the political agendas. So we're seeing the rise of civic empathy in keeping with our keynote speaker. I think absolutely this is being driven by civic empathy, compassionate leadership, and it is drawing heavily on ecosystems as a source of knowledge. So how does that knowledge, once you've identified community need, how do you articulate that need into market signals that the market can respond to? Two approaches. There's the bottom-up approach, and where you're articulating that through charters, accords, and the procurers can look at those documents and draw from those. Or there is a top-down, which is responding to the pressure for standardized measurements. And here you're seeing the use of social value menus. My interviews said that social value menus have been incredibly helpful in providing some bounded rationality to this big undefined space, but that they absolutely need to be reflecting the local context and the local need. My interviews also said, next slide please, that there is very little support for financial proxies. So we've heard a lot about monetization. There is concern about quantification, gamification of the system, that large players can invest in the resources to do this. But by having the financial proxies, are we perpetuating the very economic system that and the dominance of the current system that we're trying to change? So absolutely loud and clear, I'm hearing from public managers, there is high concern for tying financial proxies to this process. And I'd just like to mention that in both Northern Ireland and Canada, there's a point system as opposed to a financial metric system that's being used. I'm not going to go through all these, but I would like to really point out that the public managers stressed, they think that we are now introducing competition where there used to be collaboration. And so there is a high need for collaboration and for us to design systems that reward collaboration. We need to understand the difference between equality and equity. And I think equality is, regulation, public services and what is good for the greater public good. Social value to me is about inequity. It's about putting the resources where they're needed most to give people what they need to achieve equal opportunity. So my gift for today and from all this work is that the current system is still very focused on low bid. We still have performance related targets that are about cost savings. Transitional approach is to raise the bar and to have technical specs that add green, for example. But ultimately, it still gets awarded on a ratio of price-quality ratio. I think there's an area where we could be telling the market exactly how much money we've got and challenging the market and awarding entirely on the best social outcome for the available funds. I call this priceless procurement. I think it could foster interesting collaborations with large organizations and SMEs, BCSEs. I think it can stimulate innovative outcomes, build the capacity of the public sector to see what the market will do when it is rewarded on best social outcome and price is removed from the equation. And so I offer that as an idea. I don't think we're going to solve horizontal problems with vertical silos, which is how we've set up society today. And I think the horizontal work is where we build the strength and improve our social fabric. And I'll wrap up by saying I think priceless procurement absolutely is capable of valuing what matters most to build capacity. Let's remove price in some cases and let the market and the partnerships that we can collaborate together to move us forward with this massive amount of public money. Thank you.